It's very funny they've gone to such extreme lengths to save weight with this car when it weighs as much as it does and it has air conditioning and things like that. Wow! Howdy, is that something? Hi everyone, I'm Kenan from Cars and Bids, and today I've come to Los Angeles to talk about something extreme. This is the Lamborghini Huracan STO, and it is extreme in every regard. From its design and performance to its handling and setup, this car is truly wild. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing its facts and figures. First, we'll take a general look at the history of the Huracan and where it fits into Lamborghini's past. Then we'll get nerdy and talk about the technical details of this car. There are a lot of them. And then we'll do what I really want to do and take this thing for a drive. And with that, let's get started. Before I get going though, que sorpresa, this STO is currently for sale, being auctioned live on Cars and Bids. This car is something truly special, as it's an outstanding spec, finished in blue Frontos with the full exterior carbon pack and a ton of factory equipment and very special details. It also has just 2,600 miles, and if you've been in the market for one of these, after you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below where you can head to the live auction of this one. We can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. And we begin the story of the STO by first talking about the Huracan. Debuting in 2013 first online and then in 2014 at the Geneva Motor Show, the Huracan was the replacement for the beloved Lamborghini Gallardo, which had been in production since 2004. Much like the Gallardo, this car would share its mid-engine V10 platform alongside the Audi R8, as Volkswagen Group wanted to develop both cars in tandem to cut down on costs. And so we got the Lamborghini Huracan, or Huracan as it's more properly pronounced. This car derives its name from a Spanish fighting bull from the 1800s, very similarly to a lot of other modern Lamborghinis, much like its bigger brother, the Aventador. Like the Gallardo before it, Lamborghini would produce a lot of different variants of this car to suit their customers' different needs. They would start with the LP 610-4 Coupe and Spider, which had all-wheel drive capability, hence the Dash 4. Then they would offer cars like the LP 580, Dash 2, which was a rear-wheel drive version and a less expensive version of the Huracan. But it didn't take long for Lamborghini to focus themselves on ultra-high performance, and they would offer a track-focused version of this car, dubbed the Performante. This was a more honed, more focused version of the Huracan that was designed to compete against the GT3. It was designed to be a track car that you could also use on the road. Then in 2019, Lamborghini would facelift the Huracan, taking what they had learned from cars like the Performante and other models and putting it into a new car called the Huracan Evo. This model would replace the standard Huracan, but it would use the same engine that was found in the Performante. And this car would establish the new baseline for Lamborghinis. But Lamborghini wasn't done with the Huracan platform just yet. They wanted to build yet another even more focused and even more extreme track-going car, and they would give us this, the Lamborghini STO. STO stands for Super Trofeo Omologato, and this was in reference to the cars that Lamborghini built to go racing with, their Super Trofeo cars. Omologato means that this car was a homologation car, and it was road legal. This wasn't an out-and-out race car, but this was as close as you could get to a race car for the street. Lamborghini would go on to introduce two additional models into the range. They would introduce the Tecnica, which slid it in between the Evo and this car, the STO, and then they would introduce the off-road focused version of this car, known famously as the Storado. Although that car is currently in production, Lamborghini has announced that will be the final naturally aspirated non-hybrid car that they will build, meaning that it all ends with the Huracan bloodline. Although the Storado is the true end of the line for the Huracan, the STO is the end of the line for the ultra-high focused performance naturally aspirated Lamborghini. And for purists of the brand, this car is something very historically important. Although the Storado is still in production, Lamborghini has claimed they've produced over 18,000 units of the Huracan, making it one of the most popular models in Lamborghini history. It also seems fitting that a car that has held on to the V10 for so long should be the last naturally aspirated non-hybrid car that the company produces. All right, it's time to get nerdy about the STO, and we begin by talking about its design brief. Lamborghini set out to make this car do two things. They wanted it to weigh less than the standard car, and they wanted it to be even more aerodynamic. And we're going to start by first talking about the measures Lamborghini took to make this car extra lightweight. Lamborghini claims that they reworked 75% of the body of this car with carbon fiber and CFRP, or carbon fiber reinforced plastics. But they didn't just make these parts in carbon fiber, they blended them together. And that's most apparent up here at the front, with this large panel called the Cofengo. And basically, it's the hood of this car, but they also molded the fenders into it as well. Additionally, this doesn't open like a normal hood. In order to open this panel, you first have to go on the inside of this car and use a key located in the driver footwell. You simply pull it out of its little place, it has a little red tag on it, and you have access to the key. You then get back outside of the car and go to both sides of the front where there's a little lock mechanism to keep this whole part closed. You then have to unlock it on both sides before you can open this panel fully. And when you do, you see all of the intricate carbon fiber work here. I don't even want to think about how expensive this part must be, but it is impressive that Lamborghini was able to integrate everything into one panel for simplicity, and the carbon fiber work is truly beautiful. Of course, the beauty on this car isn't just skin deep though. All of the front of this car is very functional, from its huge front splitter, which channels the air into the radiators, to these ducts that relieve air and suck air through the radiators to keep everything closed, to these relief cuts that are located on the fender to reduce negative air pressure generated by the wheel spinning in the wheel arches. All of it is highly functional, and it's been inspired by, again, this car's namesake, the Super Trofeo race cars that Lamborghini built. Of course, moving down the Huracan, the carbon fiber and aerodynamic insanity doesn't end at the front. We have a lot to talk about back here, and we begin by talking about the engine cover. Much like the front, the engine cover has no struts, and you have to unlock these little latches with that same key in order to take it off. There's one on both sides, you simply undo those, and then you can lift off the carbon fiber panel, exposing that beautiful naturally aspirated V10. But this engine cover is one of my favorite parts of the car, as it's incredibly intricate. In addition to being very lightweight, it also is highly functional. It has a snorkel to channel air into the engine bay for extra cooling, and then relief cuts down the spine of it to relieve that air and, well, get the heat out of the engine bay. But my favorite addition to the engine cover is this aero blade, which runs down the spine, and it's there to increase this car's stability at high speed by cleaning up the airflow. It's not often that you see one of these on a road car, but again, this is a very focused, track-oriented variant of this car, so it's no surprise to see it here. But the big thing we can't ignore at the back of this car is, of course, the carbon fiber rear wing. Like any good track car, it's adjustable into 3 different positions, and Lamborghini claims that you can adjust the weight balance of this car by 13%. If you're at a track where having a little bit more understeer suits your driving style, then you would adjust this rear wing to its most aggressive position. If you're at a track where having a little bit more oversteer suits your style, then you would adjust this wing to its lowest position. Regardless, Lamborghini gives you the ability to choose based on your driving style exactly how much work you want this rear wing to be doing. According to Lamborghini, all of these additions means that this car can generate over 900 pounds of downforce at 170 miles an hour, making it, in their words, the most aero-capable car in the world until the current generation GT3 RS came out. So aerodynamically, this car accomplished its goal. But on the standpoint of weight, this car isn't exactly light. It weighs 3,423 pounds, which even by modern standards is kind of heavy, especially for a car that's the ultra-lightweight, stripped-out, focused version that's supposed to go to the racetrack. But that notwithstanding, the aerodynamic additions to this car are very serious. And what's cool to me is that they all come from this car's namesake, the Super Trofeo race cars that Lamborghini built. And so yes, it's a Lamborghini that has all this ridiculous stuff on it, this huge wing and all of that, but it's all very functional. And that to me makes this car really cool and very legit. And now it's time to talk about this car's brakes, which I think is one of the most interesting parts of the STO. They're the Brembo CCM-R brakes, or the Carbon Ceramic Matrix race-developed brakes. And the brake rotors for this car are particularly interesting. CCM-R refers to the carbon matrix that's used to make these brakes. It's technology that's derived directly from Formula One cars. and Brembo claims that it's 4 times more thermoconductive compared to the previous generation carbon ceramic brakes. These brakes are also pre-bedded with a specific friction material that's designed to be most effective for track and road use, making these the best possible brake discs to put on this car. The benefits of these highly advanced brake rotors means that they aren't going to fade over lots of use on the track, but as a byproduct of that, they're also extremely durable. And so for the track-focused version of this car, it makes sense to see really intense brake rotors and this kind of technology here on the STO. And Brembo is really confident about these brakes. I want to read a direct quote from their website as it's wild. They say, given its exceptional specifications, the Brembo CCM-R Plus brake disc can claim a position of absolute preeminence over all carbon ceramic products currently used in the world of competition motorsports and hypercars. That is a confident statement, but it's hardly a surprise. You have Formula One based technology here made by Brembo, so it's no wonder that they are so dang confident. But the intricacies of this braking system don't end there with the brake discs. This car also has dedicated brake ducting, actual tubes that funnel air directly onto the brake disc to keep it cool. Sometimes you'll see ducts in cars like this that maybe get airflow close, but these put it right on the brake disc and make sure that this car has adequate airflow to keep these brakes cool. This car also has an algorithmic braking system which can predict, based on how the driver is using the car, which brakes are going to overheat, and letting the driver know in advance so that they can keep the car in its optimal performance envelope. Now admittedly, on a car like this, the brakes aren't the sexiest aspect of it, but Lamborghini made it very clear that this car was focused on the track, and they put a lot of effort behind these brakes to ensure that you would have the optimal track driving experience. And now I want to talk about the suspension with this car, and we begin by talking about its dampers. This car has the BWI MR or MagneRide dampers, and the shocks and springs of this car aren't actually specific to the STO. They're shared with all the other versions of the Huracan. But Lamborghini did add some STO specific components to this car, most notably rear wheel steering, giving this car even better handling capabilities and an artificially smaller feeling wheelbase. They also added STO specific sway bars and various suspension bushings that are more beefed up and generally tougher in order to handle the extra strain that the track version of the Huracan would put on those parts. Another interesting aspect of the STO that often goes overlooked would be its tires. Co-developed with Bridgestone, they were designed to give this car the benefits of a slick tire while giving it the versatility of a treaded tire. It's always cool to see a car that has tires that are developed specifically for it, and well, the STO is very special, so it's not a surprise to see these unique tires on its wheels. Continuing the discussion of suspension though, this car has double wishbones all around, hardly a surprise. It also has an adjustable alignment suspension, meaning that you can dial in or out however much camber you want based on your specific needs for whatever racetrack you're taking this car to. Interestingly to me though, is that it doesn't use eccentric bolts to do this. Instead, it uses shims, which are a very old school technology, but they work, and that's what Lamborghini went with for the STO. While I'm in this specific location of the car, there are 2 more things I want to talk about, and they are, of course, the wheels found on the STO. They are made of magnesium in order to be as lightweight as possible, and naturally, like a lot of track cars, they also have center locks. But more importantly is the driveline on this car, and that's because this car is rear-wheel drive. Earlier Huracan variants were all-wheel drive, and the Gallardo before that also used all-wheel drive. Lamborghini has believed in that since the Diablo. But for this car, again, that's supposed to be focused on experiential fun and enjoying it on a track, Lamborghini went with dedicated rear-wheel drive. And now it's time to talk about the engine of the STO, but before I do, I have to talk again about that engine cover. As I mentioned, it has very specific releases. You put the key into it, you twist it to unlock, push down, and then the engine cover is released. But there's another trick. On the passenger side of the car, there's a special catch that you have to reach your hand into and press to operate in order to release the engine cover. Once you've done that, you can slide it out, and you really need 2 people to do this. Thank you very much, Kenny, for helping me out, as it's a huge piece of carbon fiber. But that is the trick. There's a release on the passenger side that you have to do in order to get it off. I couldn't find that information anywhere else on the internet, including in Doug's video, so it's noted here if you ever have to remove the engine cover from an STO. But on to its glorious engine. This is a 5.2 liter naturally aspirated V10, and in this trim for the STO, it produces 631 horsepower and 417 foot-pounds of torque. And it means that this car can get from 0 to 60 miles an hour in about 3 seconds, which is plenty adequate for a modern performance car. This engine is very interesting to me as it's a blend of both old school and new school. It's old school in that it has things like a dipstick, which a lot of modern cars don't these days, and, well, it's a gigantic naturally aspirated V10 being produced in the modern era. It's new school in that this car has direct and ported fuel injection, which is a first for a V10. As I mentioned in the Lexus LC500 video I did recently, which has a very similar setup, this is incredibly beneficial to this car as you get a very efficient low RPM air-fuel mixture ratio, meaning you have better efficiency from the engine, but you're also able to extract higher RPMs out of it before the engine starts knocking. And this means that you can play with things like the valve timing to extract even more power out of this car than you otherwise would if you didn't have direct and ported fuel injection. But as I mentioned earlier in the video, this car is a big deal because this is the last time that Lamborghini is going to use a naturally aspirated non-hybrid assist engine in any car. The Huracan will mark a very specific point in Lamborghini's history where things really start to change for the brand. And so seeing it here in a car that is as special as this one, and in cars like the Storado, is really unique. And it's something that we really should take note of as, well, it's a historical moment. And now we move inside the STO to talk about, well, two things. One is its transmission. This car has a 7-speed DCT, just like you'd find in basically any other Huracan. The interesting thing about the driveline, though, is that it doesn't have an electronically operated differential. There's no e-diff in this car. Instead, it has a standard conventional limited slip differential. I suppose that's just to make this car simple. Lamborghini really didn't go into detail that I could find, but it has a normal LSD in the back of this car. The other thing I want to talk about is how focused this interior is. There's not a lot to distract you here. There aren't tons and tons of buttons on the steering wheel. There's no flare to the dash, nothing like that. And everything in here is covered in Alcantara and carbon fiber. That's pretty much it. The door panels, for instance, all carbon fiber with the exception of the door pull, which of course is cloth to save weight, which again, it's very funny they've gone to such extreme lengths to save weight with this car when it weighs as much as it does and it has air conditioning and things like that. But nonetheless, this is a very focused interior. It feels very performance inspired and really, it just makes you want to go and drive this thing. Okay, it's time to go drive the STO. And normally I don't like start the car and then go drive it, I just go drive it. But in this case, we're going to start it inside because it's so cool. We press the button and here we go. Oh. All right, let's go drive this thing. The initial impression I get is that like it's very clearly focused. Like, you know, the suspension is rough, the engine is an integral part of the experience. It is annoying that stop start is on, so I'm going to turn that off right now. You just realize this is a very focused sports car. Now, this is a true Kenan thing in that I have never driven a Huracan before. It's my first time driving any Huracan, and of course, it's it's an STO. I like to start at the top and drive the best stuff. So this is kind of also my initial impressions of what a Huracan is like in addition to the STO. It's stiff. It's very stiff and very focused, and it feels raw. Now, everybody I was talking to at the dealers, I was like getting ready to drive this car. They're like, "Oh man, that car! I love that car." And so I think that bodes well when, you know, people speak so highly of a particular car and speak so fondly of it. But even at low speed, that engine is such an integral part of the experience. It's omnipresent. Like you just know it's there. There's no escaping it, which is part of the celebration of this car. Oh man, I'm in love with the sound this thing makes. You know, an apt comparison to this car right away, of course, is the GT3 RS. Extreme aero, lots of carbon fiber, naturally aspirated engine, kind of the last of its kind. But this is... This has so much theater and drama to it, exactly like an Italian car should. You just want to play with that amazing engine. And it's got great torque. Now granted, I haven't gone very fast yet. The car is warming up and I'm kind of driving around, just puttering around. This is definitely not a car you would want to use every day. I'll say that for sure. But as an experience, it's so insane. The other thing that's wild, like I look out the back, no visibility. I turn my head this way, I can't really see much out of this car. It's still a Lambo. It might be a track-focused one that, you know, all this engineering has gone into. It's still a Lambo. And it just has this theater to it that I love. To comment on a couple of things, so the interior is, you know, pretty Spartan by modern day standards. There's very little to distract you. You have a little screen down here, which is nice. And it's a nice place to be, but it's certainly not lavish. I wouldn't call it that. Just like, there's just lashings of carbon fiber and Alcantara, and you know, you get a steering wheel, that's it. You know, there's, you know, it is a very focused cockpit for sure. So I'm in Los Angeles filming this, and the roads here aren't actually all that bad, but you feel every undulation, no matter how small, you really feel it in this car. But that said, this thing feels so direct, and the steering is so fast in this car. It's just like I can avoid potholes like crazy. What a wild, wild experience this is, even at low speed. Yeah, it's a new car, and so you kind of take for granted that it exists. You're like, yeah, you know, it's a new Lamborghini, kind of whatever. This is a very special car. It's not every day you get to drive the end of something, and this is the end of the line for cars like this. Because of that engine. Wow. Wow. Oh my God, do it again. Wow, this car is alive. Woo! Boy, howdy, is that something. Man! You can hear it struggling for traction there at certain parts, and there's an argument that this car should have been all-wheel drive instead of just rear wheel. But wow. Wow. It's an experience. This engine is utterly wild. How it just gets up, and it's so, it's just such an involving experience. I'm in love with it. I'm really in love with it. And that said, you know, I often love manual transmission cars. I make a big point of that. But in this car, like, I don't think you would want one. It's so frantic and there's so much going on, like, and just be able to go more, more, more. I want to hear that sound. Like, you just can bang the paddles, and it's just like, it's really nice. I think the dual clutch really suits this car, and it's so finely tuned at this stage in the game for Lamborghini. It's hardly a surprise. And if you're looking to set lap times, you know, maybe this isn't the right car. But if you're looking for just like an experience, this delivers that. This absolutely, without question, delivers a hoot of an experience. Definitely unlike pretty much anything else I've experienced. It's intense, and you have to be awake. But man, it's just naturally aspirated cars rule. This is so fun. All right, let's do it again. Come on. Oh, and the brakes. Oh man, they're good. Woo! It's like eating something spicy. This car, you're like, whew, that's a lot. But at the same time, you're like, but I'm gonna have another bite. I just want another bite of it. And that is the Lamborghini Huracan STO. This car, like I said at the beginning, is truly extreme. From its aerodynamics and extreme use of carbon fiber to its performance and, of course, that glorious naturally aspirated V10. If this truly is one of the swan songs for the end of the naturally aspirated non-hybrid Lamborghini, well, what a way to go out. And if you've been in the market for one of these, you can buy this one on Cars and Bids. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon. What a car. Goodbye.